tarot cards are often the first step and basis for a seeker of metaphysical knowledge, like you, to discover your forever path. That could be astrology, numerology, healing arts, or any other spiritual interest you discover along the way. Elaine Ireland is not only a teacher of tarot, she is a mentor who supports you and will be there for you. Visit www.elaineIrelandtarotmaster.com now and discover how Elaine's mentoring, tarot card and psychic readings, tarot card classes, and more help you to grow into the true being you are meant to be. Welcome to Conversations with the Ancients, where you're about to discover a whole different world than the one that, up until now, you've believed you're familiar with. World-renowned metaphysicist, practicing psychic, and tarot teacher Elaine Ireland invites you on a journey where you'll hear voices from the past, interviews with some of the greatest metaphysicians you've never heard of, because in their time, they needed to move with stealth. You'll also meet today's spirit mediums, healers, and others who will show you a side of the paranormal you've never seen before. Be sure you visit our website at conversationswiththeancients.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, hear the words of metaphysicians who blazed the trail. You're not in jail, thanks to them.
Mac McKethan is my name. And the way I got into this was back in the 90s. My mom was about to retire. She went somewhere and saw an Aura camera, and she thought that was the neatest thing, decided to buy one. She told my sister. She didn't tell me at first. Patty let me know. And I said, Mom's going to spend $10,000 on a what? I'd never heard of one. Back in the 90s, they were kind of a new thing. And so I drove over to Houston to where somebody had a show going on and had some pictures taken. And I was pretty turned on to it. And thought, okay, this is pretty neat. Didn't know a chakra from a light bulb. Didn't have any idea about metaphysics. Very, 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 very little. Very, very, almost zero. Started reading all the books that I could on everything about metaphysics and chakras and everything. But the best advice Mom and I got, and this was after we'd done maybe one or two shows, one of the psychics told us, throw your books away now and start using your intuition. Oh my gosh, it took off. It took off immediately. If something popped in our head, ask somebody about, did you have a near-death experience? And by gosh, they did. I had no idea how I knew that. It just would pop in. And it just took off. In the stories that we heard, and of course from the readers, the healers, but most importantly from our clients, it was just amazing. I think we were more entertained than our customers were. And we just had a ball. The next thing I know, we're driving to Arkansas, we're driving to Oklahoma, Louisiana, New Mexico, all over Texas. And my mom and I were weekend warriors, I guess you could call us, and just had a fantastic time. But I feel like I fell into it. It's just because my mom saw it and liked it and bought one. And a lot of things had to fall into place for that to happen. One of the ones was my dad had passed away a few years earlier. He'd never okayed that. He just thought it was crazy. And Mom, she had been to a couple of psychic fairs, and she was so impressed with people. And she's like, I want to learn how to do that. And everybody told her the same thing. You already know how to. You just got to.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Mm-hmm. She just thought that was the neatest thing. And I thought it was pretty neat. And gosh, we spent almost 20 years, traveling the roads. It went by quick. Every show was amazing.
Oh, it has. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Along the way, his mother became known as Aura Mom.
Very true. People forgot her first name.
Aura Mom.
They really did.
Mom. I don't think I ever knew it.
Yeah,
I don't think I ever knew it.
But she became Aura Mom, and it stuck. And she enjoyed it. She wore that with a badge of honor. But I can remember
just
telling
so people know. Your mom was a retired nurse, was she not?
Physical therapist. Mm-hmm. And
so she had the science that mm-hmm. she wove into the metaphysical, and I want people to understand that they are compatible. Science and metaphysics, science and psychic, they're compatible. So for somebody that's getting ready to retire from the medical field, taking over immediately a metaphysically based, spiritually based tool to work with the public, that's a huge leap.
Yes, it is.
people. That's
Yes,
a
it is.
huge leap. Yeah. It's amazing what we have, the people that we have in our community. Mac and I were talking about this the other night on the phone, that we have people from all walks of life,
Mhm.
all walks of life that embrace what you can't see, what you can't understand, that leap of faith stuff. Your mom was what, in her 60s when she started?
That would be right. Let's see. We started in the
In her
90s. She was
60s.
born in, yeah, she would have been in her mid 60s. And
Yeah.
she was wanting to retire.
Still looking for those. I'm
She
still
wanted to
looking for those
retire.
pictures of the two of you.
There's somewhere. She wanted
There
to
you go.
retire because she was so busy with the quilt guild and her gardening that it was getting that her home health practice that she was still doing like 3 days a week. It was getting in the way. And it's like I'm so busy doing this and this, and of course, the next thing you know, we're traveling all over. So she still stayed busy. She never
She
slowed
loved
down.
it though.
She never slowed down.
Yeah.
And on her days off, she was, she made all of her own clothes, and she'd be making quilts. She had some quilts. Years. And
Sorry, I thought I had that turned off. There we go.
yeah, my phone. I'm sure
I
somebody.
did.
My neighbors, when they're checking their mail, might
That
ring
was
the
Merlin. Do you remember Merlin?
Oh, Marilyn?
Jeweler? The jeweler Merlin?
Merlin. Oh, yeah.
Merlin. That's truly her given name, Merlin.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Merlin.
Okay. Hello.
Hi. Oh, hang on. I didn't mean to answer the phone, Merlin. I'm sorry. I'm doing a conversation with Matt. I'll talk to you later, sweetheart. Okay. I'm not going to put this in the drawer because we're going to need it for reference material later. I've got some things on the screen about the machines. You were talking about the man who made these machines in the United States, but we were talking about the lady that actually introduced it into this part. She had a small box where your camera was up on a tripod.
Mhm.
She had a box that literally sat on the table.
And I don't know if the same guy may have made that. There was a German guy, Hans something. I cannot remember his last name. He was making a camera as well. And I think the ProGen became a more popular one. I think that might have been the predecessor. I don't know if Guy Coggins had some of those. He may have. I've not spoken with him in 15 years. I hope he's still around. He just
I don't know. This article may say whether he is or not, because they are talking about him. This article is about his company.
Mhm.
How does the human being is a complex organism full of emotion, intelligence, spirit, one aura can change from time to time. Man, can it? I mean, from 30 minutes or less.
Oh,
and it shows him with a camera on a tripod, taking a camera, and then it gives us a brief history while paranormalism was taking North America and Europe by storm. Among the paranormal beliefs popular in the Victorian age was Franz Anton Mesmer's 18th century theory that all animate and inanimate things, were charged with a vital fluid. While some occult photographers sought to record ghostly forms, those inspired by mesmerism wanted to show the vital fluids that comprised objects. And why wouldn't a camera work? So he got into the Kilarian, Kirlian photography, named after Soviet inventor Semyon. That's what she had, was a Kilarian. Okay. That's what she called it.
Okay.
Yeah. And he
I remember
lived
hearing
from
that name, but I don't remember much about him. I'd have to Google it, I guess, to refresh my memory.
1898 to 1978. That's how long he lived. So this thing's been around a long time. Who discovered that if an object on a photographic plate was connected to a high voltage source, as an image is produced on the photographic plate, which is what you were talking about. You put your hands on it. An adept electrician, he was often called upon to fix lab equipment in various institutions. In 1939, he witnessed a demonstration of a high-frequency therapeutic device and observed a small flash of light between the machine's electrodes and the patient's skin. Curious about this flash, he sought to photograph it in a series of dangerous investigations that resulted in, and I cut myself up there, contingent on one's belief in metaphysics, the art of aura photography, a process that visually translates the electromagnetic energy a subject emanates into color. That's what always fascinated me. What did the camera pick up in the way of color, and did it translate the energy, now I know, into color?
Yeah, I don't know how it was so well tuned, but it was. The colors were right on. I do remember something about the Calarian, if we're pronouncing it right, the Calarian camera. Yeah. He did an experiment one time. He took a picture. Imagine a maple leaf. If you just take a picture of a maple leaf, and it's got a little outline of an aura all the way around the leaf. Then he cut the leaf in half and took a picture of the half of the leaf, but it still had the aura of all three parts of the, it still looked shaped like the maple leaf. So I thought that was one of the cool experiments that they did with that camera. It showed, the aura was still there, even though the leaf was, or half of it was.
I would wonder if there was a color where they created the cut, like a color of grief, because that was probably a living. I look at plants as living beings. Mm-hmm. So it would be interesting to do that with the newer cameras. Mm-hmm. And see if that edge is a slightly different color.
Yeah, and with the ProGen, it's tough because it's set up for the human hand to be on those plates. We've experimented. We put different crystals, and I think we even put ash on the hand plate and everything. Got some interesting pictures, but like I say, it's set up for the chakra points of the human hand. So I don't know how accurate we would be, but it was fun to have a human holding ash or holding a crystal skull and have their hand on the hand plate at the same time. It definitely affected the auras.
Yes, I've done things like that. It would be hard because when you put your hands on these plates, you got 5 fingers, and those 5 fingers have to be on a particular place, and the plate designates that. So you hold it, and I've taken pictures with second people. Have either them sit in my lap, or I sit in their lap, or we stand in front of each other, behind each other, and it does change. Just this last fair, I think I took, not the last one, but the time before that, like 6 pictures with 6 different people, and it's so different.
Oh, I can imagine. I bet that was fun.
By yourself, and then do it with them. And when Fran and I were together, to me, that was one of the most interesting ones, because Fran and I were together. We sat side by side. Instead of standing up with each other, we held hands over the plate. Mm-hmm. And when the photograph was developed, it was exactly split down the middle. She had her aura, I had my aura.
That's cool.
She had a little bit of my aura, and I had a little bit of hers from the shoulder work. Mm-hmm. It blended. That's the first time that's ever happened. Yeah,
I've seen some where one person's aura is stronger than the other person, so it kind of dwarfs something. I guess that's just normal human interaction. Sometimes one person's energy is just a lot stronger than the other person's. It kind of overpowers it.
Well, sure, I can understand.
And a lot of times, where it was funny, it might be a couple. Maybe she's a little, 4'10", little tiny thing, and he's a big 6'4" cowboy. Guess whose aura was stronger?
The little one.
The little one. Yeah. I saw that happen.
It's because it comes from what's inside.
Yeah.
It's what's inside.
She's nurturing him, or she's protecting him, and you think of big tough guy disappears inside of her aura.
Tell us about some of the auras that you remember the most that might have been really different or interesting to you.
The ones that I got such a kick out of, a lot of times I'd have a little baby spirit floating around in an aura, and it'd just be like a little red Christmas light, that just happens to be, maybe around somebody's head or whatever. And more often than not, either they were pregnant or somebody in their family. Happened several different times. There was a lady that came to our fair one time. I asked her if she was pregnant. She looked at me like I was nuts. She was, I think, 49 years old. She said, "No, my daughter's pregnant. You're picking that up." And I said, "No, I'm picking this up on you." She didn't know she was pregnant.
Oh, bless her
and,
heart.
and her,
At
da- and her daughter had
49.
babies like a month or two apart. And it was years later,
Wow.
this little kid comes into the fair, breaks away from her mom, runs over to the camera, starts grabbing me on the leg and says, "I'm Stephanie. I'm Stephanie." I was like, who the heck? Stephanie was her daughter. and,
Oh,
and I watched Stephanie grow up. I had a daughter about the same time. They were about, but that was so cool. And the mom and the daughter used to come to all the fairs, and I got the biggest kick out of that. I had one time that there was times that and I try not to cry in front of my kids, but I've had customers that they cried and I cried. And one was a little girl. We were out in West Texas. I think we were in Odessa. Little girl about 4 with her grandmother. And they're walking around in the fair, and the grandmother did not look comfortable at all. She was afraid to be in a psychic fair. Somehow we were antichrist or something. You've seen that with people. She was very uncomfortable. But she wanted to know if we could do the daughter's pictures, and she didn't have a whole lot of money. I said, why don't we do both of you together? Put your granddaughter on your lap, and we'll do the picture. And we did. And on the little girl's shoulder was a big white beach ball right next to her. And I knew that was somebody close to her had died. I told her, I said, some close to you is still watching over you. Somebody died recently. Grandma starts crying. Little girl's all excited. Her dad had died. And the reason the grandma brought her to the psychic fair is the little girl kept saying, "Daddy's walking me to kindergarten every day. Daddy's with me all day long. And my brothers and sisters are telling me I'm crazy." No, he's right there. He's right there. So she got vindicated. Grandma was crying. I was crying. Sarah was, I think Sarah and Haley both were there. I think they were such a sweet moment. Yeah, Dad's still with you. And and you'd see that, maybe an hour or two later, I'd see something else just as amazing. But, just what we did for that woman and for that little girl, I didn't even care if they paid me for the photo. It was just
peace
such
of
a
mind.
neat moment for them.
Validation.
Mm-hmm. And I did have an unusual one.
You did it for so long. You've got to have thousands.
Oh, things trigger, and I'll remember. Oh, yeah, I remember this.
Sure.
But I had an unusual one. It was one of Julie's shows that we did up in, I think it was either, I want to say Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was a Holiday Inn. I kept getting that little red baby spirit in almost every photo in that same corner of the room. We'd do the same fair a month or two later, and I did it. What I finally picked up on, there was a little baby spirit floating around in that room, probably dating back to when the Native Americans were in that part of Oklahoma. But it kept showing up in everybody's picture. I had guys that, you're not pregnant, are you? Why is this baby spirit?
When one's pregnant, the other one's pregnant too. What can we say?
Could be. But yeah, like I say, if I took 25 photos that day, I'd have it 24 of the 25 would have. But yeah, we had so many amazing pictures. The near-death survivors, a lot of times by the color, kind of a pale blue, just a neat calmness, like a sky blue color. They weren't afraid of anything. These are people that had died before, and after that, they're no longer afraid of anything. They're not afraid of dying. They're not, they lose all their fears. And so all of a sudden their spiritual vibrations go up. But the stories they would tell were just so amazing. Had some that did not want to come back, but they were forced to come back, and it wasn't their time. And the moms always wanted to come back. They had to come back and take care of the family. But I had one, I think she was in Corpus Christi, a little Hispanic woman. Excuse me. She had to come back. She was in heaven. She was at the white light, and she said, "I have to go back because I wrote a check in the checkbook, and my husband can't read and write, and he doesn't know how to balance the checkbook. I've got to go." What she's really saying is, I've got to go back and take care of my husband. And I thought that was such a sweet reason to come back. It's because it's Guadalupe something, little sweet little.
He can't read or write. Yeah.
But I had one guy. He died
during
heart surgery. And had a heart attack, and he didn't want to come back. I mean, he came back cussing, blankety blank. But I don't want to go back. You're not done yet. You're going back. No, I don't want to go back. So there's the stories are as unique as every human being out there, and just a lot of people would use the camera to monitor their progress. They'd get on a spiritual path. And so they do a photo every month or two. And I know, lots of people, and you've probably done it as well. I've been taking some more classes. I've done this. Or maybe I'm a Reiki master now. What's my aura look like versus back before I even knew what a chakra was? I know mine changed. Mine changed quite a bit. but it was really fun watching people. I had one guy that was a prison guard, and so his was just a dark, angry red. First time I did a photo, but thinking of his job is probably pretty scary. He's got to be a tough guy. Within about 6 months, he had the most beautiful, perfect white halo. We'd taken some Reiki classes. It's just amazing to see that kind of change.
I like to take a photo if the camera is available. We'd get set up on Friday nights and come in on Saturday when you get to the table before you start work, and take a photo before I do any readings. See what it looks like. And
Thomas Nolan used to do that. He always liked to do one before the fair, one at the end of the.
Right. And if I can, if the people are still there, and if I can, take one end of Saturday, same thing on Sunday. But a lot of times you don't. You do one on Saturday and one. I'm telling you, this. A lot of times before a fair, for about 5 years, I looked like that clown wig that has all the colors in it. That's what I would look like.
Monkey brain.
Right.
You're doing 100 details, making sure everything's okay.
Yeah. And then on the end, Saturday evening, I'd have a blue or whitish, sometimes pinky lavenderish, depending on what I picked up that day. Come back in on Sunday morning, and it's monkey brain again. And then by the end of the fair, it's back to a more peaceful color. Let's just say that. A more peaceful color. I can remember too how it let go.
Well, I've always been known as somebody that talks a lot, and I do. I came in as a communicator of some kind. I'm not sure why, but I think I know. But my mom's the same way. But we would go do a show in El Paso, and we would drive almost all the way to Van Horn without saying a word from that show, because we're still processing all the neat stuff. We're kind of talked out. Our minds are still, man, that one was neat, and that story was bizarre. And what about this one over here? That, and it just, like I say, processing it all. It was just like a wow moment. We get to Van Horn, and the whole conversation would be bathroom, yeah, bathroom. We'd stop, and then we get back apart. But it was just so. It's hard to describe it. The words, I don't think the words have been invented for that feeling that you get after a show like that. Your mind is just so turned on to, you're in that zone. You're in that. I don't know how to describe that zone, but it's so special. It's a very special.
Mac and I have been talking about colors, and Mac can help me with this, but we have colors here all the way out. And sometimes they look like a rainbow. They're different. Sometimes they kind of blend together. Sometimes you get the white, you get a shape. Sometimes you get a shape. And that's the aura, right, that he's talking about here. The colors all have meanings. And it's white. Typically, it's the primary colors. But every now and then, you'll get an odd chartreuse green or a yellow, or a deep green, a light green, a pink, a red, an orange. Red is typically active energy. Anyway, all of the colors mean something. And you may get a solid color, but then you've got a bubble of pink. Or it's really interesting. I've seen, not in my photos, but I've seen objects in people's auras that will show, they'll bring their pictures and show them to us. And they've already gotten a reading. And that's another thing, public. You have a picture. It's a, what do you call it? Where you take the
Polaroid.
Polaroid. It's produced as a Polaroid.
Now people our age know what Polaroids were. Younger person may not know about it.
Right.
This was before digital, long time.
Right.
The old technology.
But the film is it's a little bit bigger Polaroid than the smaller ones before, but the longer you leave it alone, the more is going to come through. So you kind of leave it for a couple of hours, unless you just want to sit there and watch it process, which is an interesting thing too. But I usually set mine up on the table and just leave it alone. And when it's, by the time I'm leaving that evening, it's as intense as it's going to get. But if you look at it again in the morning, something else may be there.
I've had people tell me stories. One of them, a lady told me hers. She put it on her dresser at home, and she looked at it one day, and there was a cross across the next day it was gone. Now, I
Yeah.
personally have not had that happen, but I've heard several times people have told me their photos changed and
Yeah.
something was going on.
Do you think that? Do you think what is shown on the photograph has something to do with either the chemical of the processing tool? I don't know how to say it, because it is a chemical process.
Okay.
And if you change cameras or you change film, are the colors going to change, or will the colors pretty much stay the same?
What I noticed, if I stayed with the Polaroid brand of film, my colors stayed the same. I changed to Fuji one time because I just couldn't find the Polaroid, and it changed the shades of all the colors. I had all these people tell me, "Look how much brighter my greens are," and I'm going, "I changed film," and so it's kind of hard to compare the one against the other. It did change it. So yeah, there is a mechanical and chemical process going on there, and that's what I'm amazed with Guy Coggins being able to tune that machine. When I see somebody's aura, it's the same shades. There's a million shades of the color green. It's the same shades that I was seeing. And there was times that I would tell people ahead of time, "Oh yeah, you're a bright yellow with a white halo up here," and do their photo exactly that. And and now
you were gifted with the
I don't always see them. I sense
the ability. Say that again. I interrupted you.
Oh, so sometimes I don't necessarily see them as much as I sense them. I just kind of know, oh, this person's going to be orange with a little green thingy over here. Why do I know that? I don't question it.
That's your psychic ability.
My intuition is. I trust my intuition. I trust. After working with you guys, I still feel like a rookie around. I told Thomas Nolan that, but I said I feel like such a rookie. When he told me, "No, son, you're not a rookie anymore." Coming from Thomas, one of my heroes, that really made my day. But yeah, I use my intuition right now. If my intuition tells me take the long road to get somewhere instead of the short road, I just turn. I just do it. I don't even know why. I don't need to know why. I just trust it.
I wish everybody trusted their intuition like that. Really. I wish they did. Mm-hmm. That's that inner voice that tries to take care of us.
Mm-hmm. I wish it would work with a lot of readers.
Believe that.
I haven't quite gotten that one down yet. But now, I've had times, and I know this probably happened to all the readers, but I've had times that I would know something, I would sense something, but my guides were telling me, "Don't bring it up with this client. It's something they have to go through on their own. Don't mess with their lesson." Even then I'm like, gosh, there's this person standing right next to them that's like, trying to help. Don't tell them, don't say a word. Okay, I won't. But I always think, is that something that you run into a lot? You feel like
because of our. Well, I have to bring up the word ethics here because, and our community does try to follow rules and ethics as much as we can. We are also limited by legal rights about what we can say. We can't say, "I diagnose you with cancer."
Oh, yeah.
What we can say is get to the doctor, and while you're there, have them draw their attention to. Why? Well, I don't know, but I'm picking up something, and since I'm not a doctor, I can't diagnose you.
Yeah, right.
Get to the doctor. That's it. But in answer to your question, if we get it, we're supposed to share it. It's how we share it. Like I just talked about that diagnostic thing. If I get this tall man standing over there, my first conversation with spirit is that energy harmful to this person? Are they harmful? And if they are harmful, is this something that living being set up with and has to learn a lesson through? And of course, all this is going through the head really, really quick while we're double talking, while we're doing double duty with talking. And I have been told they're not supposed to know yet. And I'm going, then why did you tell me? Why did you show it to me?
I'm like, but they're going, no.
Don't put me in this situation. But for the most part, we tell people what we get. What I try to do is say, I am being told that this energy is here, but I'm not being told why. So the only thing I can suggest to you is that you be careful, you stay open to communication, but you remind that energy that you are in control. And if you continue to have this person around and you're not comfortable with it, then find a medium that can absolutely guarantee you a conversation. And don't tell them, you have this energy. Say, somebody's on the other side trying to reach to me. Why? And see if you get the same response. See if they will come through that way. It could be that they're standing there supposed to work with you and you're not letting them in. It could be something simple.
What I was picking up is they were helping that person. The person in particular, when I saw that, was a woman whose husband had died, and I think he was still right there with her, supporting her. She'd started a massage business, and he was 100% supporting her, right there by her side all day long. But he was like, "Shh, don't let her know I'm here." Okay.
Most spirits want to be seen or heard or felt.
Mm-hmm. This one wanted to be the invisible hand.
All right. That works.
And so I thought that was so cool. But with the camera, some of the things you would pick up would be like, sometimes I'd have somebody like there'd be like a pie piece missing out of their aura. And I usually took that to think there might have been something physical going on with that person. And the same person, if they just get balanced a little bit, it would just come back in shape. But
so it's like the energy fitting together in puzzle pieces.
Mm-hmm. It was like there was one puzzle piece that was just missing. World, I'd look at their hand, make sure they weren't missing a finger or something, because that would make me throw the camera off. So did I take a second picture and it was still the same? So it wasn't the camera.
Did you remember clients from time to time after they became a regular?
Oh yeah.
Remember their photos?
And some would bring in the whole book. This was me way back when. This was me after I had my child. This was me after I got out of college.
One of those.
This was me after I retired. The big changes.
I meant to bring my 3-ring binder off the shelf. If it's handy, I'll bring it over.
Okay.
Turning my back on you for a moment.
That's okay.
I don't see it, which means it's out. It may be in the other room.
Mm-hmm.
I apologize because I have years. Let me see if this is it. I'll be right back.
See, I can still see you.
Oh.
Like my Ring doorbell. I watch my neighbors getting the community mailboxes by my door. So you get to see everything.
This is one of the first photographs.
Very good. I like it.
My light is in the way. Let me.
No, that's right.
Close.
That's right. No, that was fine.
It looks like I have slats. So there we go. This is one of the first ones that was ever taken. You can see my slats reflecting in it.
Mm-hmm.
But see the yellow down here?
Yeah, that's because you're always busy. You're always on the go. But all the blue, the white, and the violet, that's the psychic. That's all the psychic. But you're also very, very smart, very nurturing as well. That's why the yellows and the reds orange.
This one was Saturday, 9:30. The 30th.
You were ready. Look at that. I love the white in the throat chakra, because
I was ready to go to work.
You were ready. You were already. You and Spirit were already talking. And yet somebody on your right side on that one, like you had a visitor there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you had a whole bunch of visitors to the show.
I know who that was.
The whole team showed up, right?
But look at this one. This is Joe Nichols, Yanni Brewer, and Francine. See the distinctions there in color?
Purples and reds. It looks like there might even be a little baby spirit on that one side, that little dot side. Very similar. Somebody might have had a little one coming into the family. Sometimes it would be the grandmother. It would show up in their picture, but it would be the grandbaby having the baby.
Could be me. I think of it could have been Francine too. Joe is in dead center. You can see his face.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm underneath him. Yanni was over here, but I don't think you can see her face very well.
No, colors.
Yeah, but all of us created that. Anyway,
I get a lot of power.
This is how many pictures I've taken over the years. And
I
I
had a
don't
book
have
like
them
that
all on
once.
paper yet.
I passed it on to Marcia to share with all the customers. Every now and then, when I go through all my photographs, I'll find an old picture of mom or something. But
Did,
it's surprising that I've got two pictures on my wall that were painted by Sue Storm, but I like that.
were you still doing them in 96?
96. Yes, definitely.
Then you took this
Yeah,
one.
because my daughters were born in 97. So yeah, that was.
Yeah, you took this one.
Mhm.
This one was all
That
about
green,
green, all about
that,
healing, and
that,
I don't have a
that
date on it.
healing and teaching. Were you a teacher at one time? Was that?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
elementary.
I thought so. Yeah, yeah.
But I've taught classes,
Mhm.
tarot
It's
classes,
just
psychic
a teacher to help teach. Even you'd be in the grocery store and you'll be teaching somebody something.
But
That's just
this is you and then Marcia,
Mhm.
and now I'm adding the new Hannah.
Mhm.
Now see, here's one. See all the yellow?
Uh-huh.
See public how it changes?
Mhm.
It's one of my clown days.
When I see that color of yellow, I always think of PhDs. People that go to college and just make it look easy. They love to learn. Your brain is just so tuned in. You're probably working on a big project at the time when you took that. You love to learn and you love to teach and share.
That was early 20s. Yeah, I had probably just started teaching tarot again.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but public, that's what they do. Auras change because our energies change. Auras they're a photograph of our aura,
At
of
that moment.
our energy.
At that moment.
Yeah.
Because imagine you just drove in Austin traffic coming to one of the fairs. I would tell you, go wander around the fair for a little while. Get rid of that Interstate 35 energy because you're still on a white knuckle ride. Calm down a little bit before we take it.
All your stuff's going to be red.
Yes. My ex-wife showed up at a show one day, and I took her photo, and it was this stressed red. And I was going, "Did you stop at Starbucks on the way over?" Yes, of course. She just, so she's been driving for 100 miles and slammed a Starbucks. And I said, "Come back over in an hour." I said, this is you on caffeine. Yeah. This is not a typical Reiki master, but this is somebody whose palms are probably still sweaty from the drive.
Yeah.
They do change. They do. And then think about, you go outside and there's a little strange stray kitten in your yard. All of a sudden it tugs at your heartstrings and you want to adopt it. Wouldn't it be fun to do the aura photo right before and after you saw that? Because, how even us, those guys that act like we think we're tough and macho, no, it melts our heart. Yes, we want to take it and hold it and pet it. Take it home. And so yeah, your aura can change that fast. I've learned what kind of aura I've got most of the time just by how the general public receives me. I can go to HEB and total strangers come over and start pouring their heart out to me. When I was young, that never happened, but I can tell you, I'm putting out a lot of white when that happens. They trust me.
I'm a little more white in the hair than I remember.
I'm getting a whole bunch of those. Yeah. I'm dyeing my hair gray one at a time. That's the way I. They tell me you have to earn them. Well, I earned a few of them. I still see the world through the eyes of a teenager, but it's amazing how trusting even little kids. They trust me. Stray animals are not afraid of me. I've got a little hummingbird. I've got a baby hummingbird that's been coming around now. It's not quite landing on me yet, but it's not afraid of me. Like, that's kind of a nice energy to be putting out.
Yeah.
And one of my near-death survivors, he had done some black ops for the military, some stuff he couldn't, to this day, can't even discuss. But he had died a couple times. When I met him, somebody asked me, "What color aura do you see on him?" And my first question to him was, "How many times have you died?" He said, like 3. Pulls his shirt up. He'd been blown up. He'd been stabbed. He'd been shot. He was definitely a warrior. But because of that, because of the near-death experiences, he said he was somewhere, he got invited into an Aborigine tribal meeting of some kind that normally a white person would not even be allowed in. But because of his aura, they automatically trusted him. And he was one of those little babies who would just go over to him and climb up and slap. This is a guy that used to kill people for a living. But because of that aura that he had, you just automatically like this guy. You automatically feel so comfortable. But he said that for the Aborigines to invite you in, that was special. That was real special.
You just said something very important.
Mhm.
Little kids,
Mhm.
little, and animals.
Mhm.
I've always said if you want to know what's happening with other children, ask a child, which I
Yep.
often would when I was
Mm.
teaching,
Good
because
idea.
they pick up even if things are
Yeah.
not said,
Yeah.
but they know who to trust and who not to
Yeah.
trust.
Isn't that neat? Isn't that neat? And I know even with my daughter Sarah, when my sister's husband had died of cancer back, this would have been sometime, I don't know, Sarah was about 4, so this would have been somewhere around 2000, 2001. We'd be playing. Sarah loved to play Sorry. You played the board game, right? Everybody has.
Mhm.
Uncle Woody was sitting there telling her in her ear what the next Woody says, Uncle Woody says you're going to get a 2. I turn it over, it's a 2, and then a 4. Daddy, you're going to get a 10. Woody says it's a 10, and this kept going. And finally, it started bothering Sarah because she couldn't sleep because she was so sad that Woody was gone, and it'd make her cry. So finally, my sister took over and asked Woody to leave her alone because she was so sad. I mean, her mom would call me, Sarah's crying. She can't even go to sleep. She says, kind of talk her through it a little bit. But he told me when he was dying, he said, I'm going to watch over your girls if it's okay. I said, I'll take all the help I can get. You bet. But yeah, kids are so innocent and so connected. You hate to see them grow up sometimes just because they're going to lose that spiritual connection. Yeah. Hopefully they'll get it back.
My kids,
or hopefully they won't.
when I taught school, I was fortunate enough to be blessed by wonderful teacher mentors. Now, I didn't start teaching school until I was in my 40s, and I sold my cleaning companies, and I didn't have to work. I had the freedom of doing what I wanted to do. I figured for about 6 years. And I thought, well, I've always thought about getting my teaching certification. So I signed on as an aide, and I told the principal. He said, now, most people are going to think you're a teacher because of your age. And I said, I'll just have to tell them otherwise. And I went to work as a teacher's aide to see if I really could do it. And had some wonderful mentors, and did go ahead and finish my degree and got my certification and taught. But the women and men, and there were not many men in that particular school, they all were very supportive, and they were some of the most psychic people I have ever met, but yet they would not claim it. They could stand in front of a classroom and tell you, I don't care how cute and how nice that little girl's dressed, she's going to be a handful. Or some poor little kid that could barely you could count his ribs, he was going to be the smartest one in the bunch, and the kindest one in the bunch, and the most generous. They could just tell you everything there was to tell about those kids just by looking at them.
Yeah.
And I asked one of the teachers if she'd been reading their reports, and she said, oh, because you get the files on the kids that have been there before. And she said, well, some, but I really don't like to, but I do it because our principal wants us to. But we know how to size up a child.
Yeah.
So the next year when I got the files, I put them in my drawer. Didn't even look at them. Mm-hmm. And I promised myself at the end of the 6 weeks, and I made notes about all of them separately. I had my own files and behaviors and attitudes and aptitude and all of that. Same thing that would be in the file. And at the end of the 6 weeks, I read their files. Had I read their files on some of them, I would have been so misguided and made assumptions about those children. Instead, I followed my instincts, and I sat down with my principal. I said, I'm going to need about 2 hours of your time. And he looked at me and he said, really? I said, meet me at the basketball court. I don't care where. And we did sit outside, and I went over every single file and said, see the comparison? Had I read this, I would not have gotten this from that child. And I said, I'm not going to read the files anymore until after the 6 weeks. I said, I'm sorry if I'm in trouble with you, but I don't want to do it any other way but to follow my instincts. Well, for me, it worked for me. It may not have worked for other teachers, but some of the teachers thought I was crazy. You need to know if that's a violent child. You need to know if, well, I could tell by the other teachers. If I wanted to know something, I'd go to the previous teacher. But over the summer, so much can happen. Divorces can happen.
Sure.
Daddy goes to, because we still had Bergstrom here. Daddy could have been transferred. Daddy could have come home, or mom by that time. So we have to follow our instincts no matter what we're told, because people change. And especially children. And it would make me sad when I'd see one of my first graders and I'd see them 3 or 4 years later and they're all grown up, compared. So yeah, we need to follow our instincts no matter how old we get.
Something changed at the child's home. Something in their life is different. That's why this kid's acting out. Just to
something. And we could always tell when we could always tell when the medications changed.
Medications?
We could always tell whether the parents had told us yet or not. Or usually a counselor would come say, give us an official form. But we could tell by the way they were acting, reacting. Sometimes you can smell it. You can smell it on them. You can smell what they're going through. And I don't mean their little bodies are dirty or stink. It's just.
But all of your senses are picking up something on this person.
Yeah. It's the same thing with your auras. You saw auras and you didn't even know you could until you got the access to the machine.
That's very right.
And then the machine taught you that you could. Now that's awesome.
Yeah, and a lot of times, I don't go out looking for them because any more than I would look through somebody's, window of their place. So I don't want to feel like I'm spying on people. But sometimes you just pick up some colors on people. Might be in the grocery store or whatever. Yeah. Some attract you, some of them, maybe I'll go on the other aisle. So that person's got an explosive personality. I think maybe I'll go on a different area.
Leave them alone. For me, I may not see the aura, but I can feel it.
You sense it.
And sometimes you brush up against them and you almost feel like you've brushed up against something rather than just air.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that aura thing is interesting.
In that space.
For me, I put up a bubble before I go into places, especially if I know they're going to be busy. Mm-hmm. And that's like an extension of an aura or including an aura. Yeah. And that I don't hear, I don't see, I don't feel. I just go do what I need to do. And I feel protected that way.
Yeah, especially as intuitive as you are. Yeah, somebody else may be having a sad day. You're going to go home and cry. You're going to pick up on it.
Yeah, cry at the store.
Yeah, I know that's a, what's the word I want? That's the unfun part of being a psychic. You're here to feel everybody's stuff, and not everybody's stuff is fun.
I said a while ago, when we're given information, it's kind of a duty to share it. But when you're in a situation like that, say the grocery store, and you pick up on somebody, do you know you're pregnant? Do you know your husband's sick? What's going on with your mom's heart? We can't just walk up to strangers and do that. We're not supposed to. But yeah, we get the information. Yeah. That's kind of scary from a psychic point of view. Let's get back to your auras.
Okay.
Your mom hasn't been gone that long, but she has, certainly you and she both had an excellent reputation in terms of reading. Now, for the public, you can't change the colors. The colors have a meaning. You can't change the combination of the colors. It's like reading astrology, numerology. They're set things. That's it. But what makes the photograph, that's 50%. That's what Mac and his mom would look at, the colors. But then they add their own psychic energy in. I fight with people over the word interpreting in tarot classes. I say, you do not interpret, you explain. And that's what Aura Mom and Mac did. They explained the color, but they added their own energy into translation, into translating. And that's valuable for anytime you get an aura photographer photograph. Make sure you're dealing with people that have been at it a while. They know what they're doing. I'm not saying if they haven't been at it for 5 minutes. If they have already a reputation of being really good psychics, then get the photo done, because that's a big part of the photo.
Mom would start with the colors, but then I'd be listening to her when I, she'd have a bunch of people. I'd have a bunch of people, but she'd be going, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I'm being told to tell you this that has nothing to do with whether they were green, orange, or pink or whatever. It was whatever messages were coming through. And, she was just, and then she, at the end of the day, she go, I wish I was psychic like these other wow. Really?
Oh, Mama Aura.
They don't want to get out of there. They don't want to leave. Remember, we would have lines sometimes of people waiting on interpretations with Mom because they would just go on and be more information.
Well, we would watch you have lines when nobody had people at their tables.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was fun. I loved all the attention and everything, but it was so cool that like I said, when you get away from just the colors, okay, green, okay, your heart's wide open. You have to watch out. I always warn people with a lot of green. Okay, you've got a big heart, a lot of love in relationships. Are you the giver, and then somebody else comes and takes advantage of you? Oh, it happens all the time. It's something for you to work on, because you love to give, but sometimes people will use you, for that. But then all of a sudden, something else would pop in, and like we're off in left field somewhere that had nothing to do with the colors around it. It was, like a near-death experience. Some other, sometimes you could tell they had a tough decision going on, and that's, big stuff like, do I get a divorce? Do I change jobs? Do I whatever? You could tell it. You could see the chaos and I think Thomas Nolan called it the inner dialogue. It was going on in their heads. You got to quiet that inner dialogue down a little bit, just take a break from it a little bit because you got so much worry going on. It's big stuff, life stuff.
Thomas has several doctorates. Isn't one of them in the mind sciences, like psychology?
I want to say abnormal psychology.
Yeah.
And chemical engineering and stuff that's not even related, but he is just he's one of my heroes.
He's a brilliant man, and he has so much science background, and yet he's applying it with his psychic ability, and again, making it weave. I had a client tell me years and years and years ago, I think she was an attorney, that psychics are the most underpaid therapists out there.
That works.
And
I called myself an amateur psychologist after doing it.
Yeah. And we can't, I don't think we are, but so much of what comes through, and when we've used our tool for a long time and we've developed more and more and more, we do get more information that person can use, but it's not meant to be a declaration. It's meant to be a useful piece of information. Now go check it out with an expert. Go bounce it off your doctor, bounce it off your therapist. You don't have to tell them where it came from. We don't need a lawsuit, but at least draw attention to it from whatever appropriate expert. But we've had psychics be charged because they broke a law, broke a rule, whatever, when they didn't mean to. They just meant to help the client.
Cure things or diagnose things. That's right.
I don't want to, but I'm not going to ignore the fact that I picked something up. To me, that's being neglectful and it could cost that person their life or their sight, their hearing. And my thing is, I don't know what to tell you, but I know something's going on with your ear or ears, your eyes. Mm-hmm. Please promise me you'll make an appointment and do it this week, because you may have to wait a month or two. So and by that time you'll forget to do it. So make the appointment and keep it, and then draw attention to that area. That's all I can tell you, even though I may know exactly what it is.
Yes.
Or pretty close to it. I can't tell them.
Without having the right degree, we can get through. I had a fun photo one time that it was towards the end of when we were doing the photos. Had a lady about 50 years old. She came in and she had the baby spirit. And I asked her, I said, you're past those years, aren't you? And she says, yeah, it's not me. I said, well, how old are your kids? The look on her face. She goes, oh my God, I've got a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 21-year-old.
Oh no.
And didn't see her again for over a year. She went up, but she came up to me to tell me what was going on and what had happened. She said she went home that night from the fair and called a family meeting. 2 daughters and a son. She said, psychic says we're going to have a baby. She's looking at the daughters. One girl's like, "Mom, I'm on the pill." The other one, "Mom, I'm not even seeing anybody." The son is shuffling his feet and looking down at the floor. His girlfriend was pregnant, and he was terrified to tell his mom. So we got him busted. But I remember telling the lady that I'm assuming if it's in your photo, this baby's connected to you. I don't know if maybe y'all had a connection before in another life or whatever, but more than likely, maybe y'all are best friends or family, whatever. Anyway, she had the little baby in her arms, and she said, "I just wanted to come tell you this. Do you remember our photo from a couple?" "Yeah, I remember you." I think it was maybe the last show that I did that she brought that little child. She's so proud of that baby. That poor son. I felt so bad for him. I didn't need to get him busted.
Busted.
But yeah, she welcomed the baby into the family. That baby was so spoiled. You could tell. It made her day. But
I did a reading, gosh, many years ago, something similar in that the cards kept picking up pages, and pages can be ideas, or they can be children, young people, or people, even adults acting like a kid.
Okay.
And these pages kept coming up, and I already knew she had children, grown children, similar ages. She was getting ready to retire. She had her children a little bit later in life, and she'd had them like 1 year apart. Boom, boom, boom. And we kept talking about pages and ideas, and she kept her mouth shut, but I could see her grinning. So I thought, okay, one of the kids are pregnant, And finally, when we're done, she said, and she was just busting. She was just busting with joy. And she said, "I just got my certification so I could what is the right word? Babies? Foster. Be a foster a home for infants." She didn't want children yet. I want babies in my house. I want Johnson lotion and sticky diapers and kids screaming. And she said, I'm retiring in about a year, and I'm going to do it. I'm already buying cribs.
That's funny.
And a couple of years later, she had adopted 2 babies and 1 5-year-old.
Yeah.
So they didn't come through her, but she took them on as her own. So you just never know when psychically, exactly. So sometimes you don't know.
Yeah, I remember an old Native American Indian. We were one of our very first shows. Mom and I were up in southwestern Arkansas, beautiful area, northwestern Arkansas, southwest Missouri, down in that area. And the man was telling us about a crystal that he had been dreaming about his whole life. This man was maybe 60 years old. He said he was driving down a country road one day, and he realized the crystal he'd been dreaming about was in a particular farmhouse. So he pulls up the driveway, and he goes there's a lady there, and he goes, "I'm here about the crystal." She's like, "What? The crystal? You have my crystal." And so she finally, "Okay, my husband died, and in our bedroom closet is a big crystal that he had. It was the one that this man had been dreaming about for years." She ended up selling it to him for like $10. It was worth a whole lot more, but he goes, "I guess you're supposed to have this, Big single point, beautiful crystal." How the heck did he know it was in that house?
Wow.
Just
that house on that street. Yeah.
Oh yeah, just some country road, some random house. My crystal's in there. How are people that can?
It's a good thing she didn't think he was crazy.
Yeah. Well, she may have probably at first, but then she's going, "I have a crystal here. That's the one." Isn't that weird? But what a neat connection.
I want to shift a little bit. Still in your toolbox, but shifting back to CTPA, Central Texas Parapsychology Association. That was an organization, and I was on the board, so I get to talk about it. Very successful organization. You go back that far, which
I remember
you go back to
Julie Wilson,
yeah,
and you and Yanni.
That was even before Julie.
Oh, prior to Julie. Oh, Lyndon Talcott, I think, was in Austin in those years. I think he might have.
Yeah.
He was here in San Antonio.
Lyndon was, yeah.
Yeah. And maybe Kramer was, I don't know if Kramer goes back that far. Joe Nichols, I think.
Kramer came in. Okay. And Joe Nichols came in Joe Nichols had actually been part of the North Texas Parapsychology Association, which was not connected to Central. We were a direct arm of the English Foundation, the original English Foundation, which now is hundreds of years old, out of the Witch's Tower and that we had to have permission to start a chapter here in the United States.
Yep.
And Colonel Jackson did that. But Joe Nichols he moved here and he brought some of that North Texas energy with him. They wanted to join with us, but they would not acknowledge healers for legal reasons.
Okay.
For legal reasons. So we didn't join, but we supported each other. And we would invite some of their psychics to our fairs and vice versa. John Catchings was on the board of that, and I had known Bertie and John Catchings since he was a kid, young enough to slam the back door and toss his baseball bat in the kitchen floor, young. And he'd gone on to become a famous, and I mean worldwide famous, you can look him up, John Catchings, finder of dead people, basically. But he's very active in that other What?
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe
well, the reason I'm bringing this up is because you were part of that original organization, and how I wanted you to tell the people how you felt about working with an organization versus working with a production like a psychic fair.
No, I didn't really feel like I was part of the CTPA so much as I was just doing the fairs and working with you guys. But as far as for like going to the meetings, I just looked at it as kind of the administrative arm that just made everything happen, made it work.
Yeah.
And magically shows happened and millions of people came.
And had a good time.
And I looked forward to every show. And I was so tired at one of the shows, I realized I'm done. I'm done. I had 2 teenage daughters, child support payments, and mom's sick. And oh man, I felt like a pie that was cut into about 9 pieces. There just wasn't enough of me to go around. And finally I said, you know what? I don't want to bring an energy in here that I'm too tired to be here, don't want to be here. I said, you guys don't deserve that. I said, it's time to pass the torch.
We were all sad, but y'all. You were doing them with Marilyn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She totally understood. I said, I just know that I don't want to bring you guys down. I don't want to come in here just like, oh my God, I got to more work to do, another show. And it used to always be, I couldn't wait for a show. I knew when that happened, that was time. And then it got kind of interesting because I certainly missed you guys. And I guess it was maybe 6 months after Marilyn bought the camera and got Marcia using it, everything. Great job. Perfect timing for everybody. One day I was driving, and of all things, I was pulling into a Home Depot parking. I was being introspective, I guess. And I asked my angels, I said, what am I supposed to be working on now? What am I supposed to be doing this lifetime? And the answer was, you already did it. I mean, I hit the brakes and parked in the middle of that parking lot. I mean, it hit me like a ton of brakes. What? I did what I came in for. So that's kind of cool. I remember I went to one of the fairs later. I was telling Johnny that. I said, you ever get a message like that? You're done. You did. Like, what do I get to work on the stuff for the next lifetime now, or what? Yeah, it's my choice. So,
they say that people that are of service, not just in our field, but like your mom being a practitioner, your mom being a nurse, PT nurse. I've always been told that we're not finished until we've taken care of the last bit of karma.
Yeah.
With the public. And I asked Spirit one time, does that mean we have to be the same thing over and over and over again until we are? And I got a very solid yes. So if I don't get through taking care of all my psychic commitment, I'll come back as a psychic. Now, I may not do it for very long, or I may do it for another 300 years. Who knows? But you and your mom, a statement like that, you've done it. You've taken care of your karma.
I remember a message that she got. The fellow I was describing earlier that had been blown up and stabbed and shot and everything. He left us years ago. His heart gave out and he died. But he came to Mom in one of her dreams. And shortly before she passed away, she said, Bud came and visited. And he told me, come on up here. We've got work to do. And she knew what that meant, and I mean, it's like he was there to receive her rather than family members. Here's a family friend, but he's like, we got a whole bunch of work to do. I need your help. Come on. I think that probably made her more comfortable.
I wonder if they had a connection from past lives.
They may have. They hit it off like old friends,
Yeah.
and and I met him of all things. I had stopped in Bandera to in a convenience store, and the lady that owned, she and her husband owned that store. She was metaphysical, so we knew her. Knew her husband owned that store and another store. He was pretty busy. I knew him as well, but she came to some of the fairs and all. But she has her friend Bud, and she goes, "What do you see? What do you see around my friend here?" I stayed at that convenience store for almost 8 hours. It was one of those that had a little snack bar area where you could sit at the table. I didn't go to work that day. I was on the way to San Antonio. I skipped work talking to him because he had such fascinating stories. And then when I introduced Mom to him, it was like they had known each other forever. So yeah, they're very well made.
There's got to be a past life something there somewhere.
Yeah. And like I say, when she was on her way out, it was like, come on, we're not done. We got work. And what Mom never
There's always work, sweetie. I don't remember why your mom left. What took her?
Basically heart failure, congestive heart failure. And I remember I had gone out of the country. My sister and brother-in-law invited me to go to Ecuador. And while I was gone, I was getting phone messages, but Sprint at that time did not work in Ecuador. I knew I had voicemails, but I couldn't check. It's the only country in South America. I get back to the airport in Miami. I finally get a hold of the nurse. Your mom's in the hospital. She's not doing well. She's probably not going to make it. And so I fly into Dallas, get my car. I'm up like 36 hours. Sarah and I drove straight to the hospital in San Antonio. And Mom was there. She was very labored breathing. She was just hanging on. She could barely even breathe. But she did lift her hand up and move her little fingers like, hello. Yeah. I went home and I got a phone call a few hours later. She had gone, but I think she was hanging on to say goodbye.
I was just thinking she was waiting for you folks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I remember asking a couple of the readers, I said, somebody was there in that room with us. And I wasn't picking it up being grandpa or grandma, anybody. It wasn't family, but somebody was there in that room. And one of the readers told me it may have been a facilitator that was helping her. It might have been Bud, but I never have gotten a clear picture of who it was. It was a friendly person that was there to take her. I just didn't know who it was.
It feels like it was a person within a person.
Might have been.
I don't know what that means. That's the first time I've been told that.
Yeah. I didn't feel afraid of it by any means. It was like there to, come on, I'm here to carry
yeah,
carry light.
She didn't look back.
I don't think she did. A lot of times when people have died, I've felt their presence, especially early on, like, oh my gosh, they're right here in the living room. With Mom, no, she had things to go and do. And
I really mean that. It's like you walking away and not turning around and saying, bye, Elaine. You just don't look back.
Yeah. And, I had a sister that was special needs that, she met, that was in the state school there in Austin. Mom may have gone over to go help take care of her as well. And,
yeah.
And Cindy passed it's been about 2.5 years. And Cindy was not even able to talk. She was severely retarded. So, communicating with her, grunts and groans. I mean, her lifelong doctor out at the state school could communicate with her. He knew when she was feeling bad, but he didn't know what was wrong. So there was times she'd end up in the hospital and they didn't know what it was. We always said if she had something to say, she'd say it. Well, she passed and I had her remains cremated. And it was almost a year before I took the ashes down to Corpus Christi Bay, which is where the rest of the family is. And I put her in the bay. And I guess it was within just a few weeks, she came to me and she spoke. And she said, thank you, brother. I'm finally free. It was like, I felt bad that she'd sat in that box and those ashes sitting in that box for almost a year. I should have taken them a lot sooner. I felt bad at it because it set her free.
Her spirit was free out of the body that she had agreed to be in for a while. She taught a lot of lessons. Mm-hmm. I understand that because my oldest boy was profoundly retarded. Mm-hmm. He could communicate. He could not talk.
Yeah.
But he was cognitive enough to know that he could get a drink of water out of the refrigerator or the kitchen sink, where the bathroom was. We had to be very careful with him because he'd get in a tub of full water without unclothed. He'd walk right into a swimming pool. He loved water. Mm-hmm. So he communicated. One of his caretakers, when they would go to the doctor or the hospital for his checkups, towards the end of his life. He died when he was 54. It's been gone 5 years now, 5 years. And, it'd have teeth cleaned and that sort of thing. Well, there was this one machine that had a lot of things that he wasn't supposed to have, like orange drinks and things like that. But his caretaker knew to take change because that particular machine did not take bills. It had to be change. So he would always carry about $5 worth of change with him. It wasn't a cheap machine. And carry on the way out. He did not stop on the way in. He knew he wasn't supposed to. But on the way out, he'd walk straight to that machine and he'd start getting fidgety and smiling. And he'd put his hand down to his pocket and rattle his pocket. And that was the signal for his caretaker to put the change. He had a cognitive belief.
Yep.
And yet this was a little boy that they said would never go home.
Yeah.
He would never go home. And yet he lived 54 years. So I understand about the communication. And Carrie never seemed frustrated about being in that body.
Mm-hmm. That's why Cindy was. I don't think she feared death. She feared, like, if she'd go to the hospital somewhere that was unfamiliar to her, they had to send a staff member 24 hours a day that she recognized because she would be fearful of a different environment. But you could put her in a swing set and she'd swing for 6 hours and just be the happiest kid. Give her I think it's called Connect 4. She'd stack those things in there and dump the little checkers out and do it again. She'd do that for hours and hours. That's just, would she like to do it?
I didn't know that you had a family member that was retarded. That was a connection I didn't know we had. Interesting.
Yeah, she was at the state school there by Camp Mabry for just years and years and years. Nice place. Nice feel. Some of the buildings are probably 100 years old. And, pecan trees. There's pecan trees there that I remember picking up pecans with Dad and my sister back in like 1962. So those trees are still there.
Oh, yeah. The campus is still pretty much what it was. Mm-hmm. They've added a few buildings, but it's not, it's
some of them are pretty run down.
Mopac is on one side, another major road. I mean, they can't go anywhere. But we tried to get Carrie in there and we couldn't. We kept Carrie at home until he was, I say at home, he was out at Spicewood Springs. But from a psychic point of view, it was really interesting to watch those children because there was a limited amount of children at Hope House with Dr. McGarrigle. We called her Miss Mac. It was interesting to watch those kids communicate with each other.
It was.
And there was one boy that was phenomenal. During the day, he was this kid that would sit in the corner and not pay attention to somebody, but he would watch. And if a kid needed help being fed, he would very calmly walk over, take the spoon, and start feeding that child. Wow. He'd leave his food to go feed another child. And when the child was finished, he would go back to his food. He did that with all kinds of kids. But his secret was he could get out of any lock.
Oh.
And they had to they almost got in trouble for it because the rooms were not locked. And there was a security system set up with cameras. And there was always somebody awake 24/7. Beautiful house with a swimming pool, and they would cover the pool every night. Tarp would go over it. But the outside security was such that it was tripped so that if there was a fire or an emergency, it would open up automatically. But on a calm night, kids just couldn't get in and out. We couldn't get in and out as parents. We had a code, but they could. Well, he figured out how to get through the locks. And they were locks. They weren't slats. They were locks. Yeah. And he figured out how to get out. Well, they had to put him in an ankle lock. Of course, it was padded, just one, but he could roll over in his bed. It wasn't like he was stapled to the bed. And he had a buzzer. He knew how to use the buzzer to go to the bathroom. He learned how to get out of that. There was nothing that could hold him. Nothing.
He may have been, rather than retarded, he was advanced.
advanced. And that's that cognitive learning.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could have seen that in the aura, in an aura. Did you ever take a picture of your sister?
No, she didn't deal well if we took her into a crowded environment, like to a restaurant or even fast food or something. Uh, it would have been neat to do.
I've
Trying
seen
trying
pictures.
to, we would have had to set it up somewhere real quiet, away from.
Yeah, take the camera to her or whatever.
Yeah.
I've seen pictures being taken of people in wheelchairs
Mhm.
and people with disabilities, usually youngsters, but I've never seen the pictures.
Yeah.
So there's a kid now that's coming. He's a teenager. What is it? Multiple sclerosis. We've kind of watched him grow up
Yeah.
since he was little, and he's always happy, always excited to be there. And I've seen them take several pictures of him, but I don't want to be intrusive and say, "May I see your picture?" You know.
Oh, he
So
probably would
I
have. He
want.
probably would have shown it off. I remember at one time we used to tape them to everybody's. You tape it to their shirts, and then everybody sees it on them. Oh, that's fun.
I remember you doing
Marketing
that.
gimmick. Mhm. But yeah, I wish we had done that with Cindy. That would have been neat. I know we had a few people that, I don't know if it was MS or whatever, but their hands would just kind of had a mind of their own, and we would literally have to tape their hand to the box so that they could, because their hands would just be flopping all around. We'd still get a picture, but they get them to hold their hands still. They it just didn't work, and so we made it work.
Were those auras any different in any way?
They generally had a lot of deep dark blues. They're
Spiritual.
very intuitive, very empathic, very communicative. They could communicate very other ways besides just verbally.
Yeah.
They're in a whole special category, and it's really neat that somebody who seems to be so challenged is so cheerful. Having a lot of still having a good life. What a lesson there. Huh?
That always amazed me. Mm-hmm. And Carrie had a way with his facial expressions. He could have been an actor. Mm-hmm. You really could have been an actor. Of course, being a mom, you're going to pick up on some things that a stranger won't. But he would look at me. Sometimes he had no control over his bowel movements, that sort of thing. And it would be real messy, not to be ugly. But he'd look at me with this expression like, "Mama, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." He just mournful. And when it was all cleaned up, I'd take his crib outside. We'd just hose it down. And he'd get the biggest kick, and I'd hose him down. If the weather permitted. But then he started laughing again. It was like I was telling him, "It's okay. See, we can clean it up. Don't worry about it." But those kids know how to communicate. And a lot of that is done psychically. A lot of it. And with a certain amount of different.
The dorm at the state school, I went and met with the staff over there after Cindy had passed. And there was one of the clients there, one of the residents there, was just so sad. She really missed Cindy, and even though neither one of them could talk, but she missed her buddy. I mean, she was just, she knew that she wasn't coming back. I couldn't come up with the right words to tell her to keep her from being so sad. But I did have a nice poster made and framed and all. It was basically a letter to the staff out there, thanking them for all that they do. I said, I'm just her brother and Cindy's nieces are still alive. I said, but you are her real family. You made her feel safe. You made her feel loved. You made her feel special. And thank y'all so much for what y'all do. And had it on a big tree of life as the background of in this poster. And they put it up on the wall, and I assume they probably still have it. But to me, what they do is special. The people that can work with special needs, they're not doing it for paid. I don't think they're paid real well out there. But
no, they're not.
Like them that
they're not
do that job. And I think they do it because
a special person. Yeah, and some of those people are highly educated. With some of them with psychology degrees, and they're making money not anywhere near what they could be making someplace else.
Yeah. But it's what they're calling.
They do it. Yeah, right, it's their calling. Anyway, okay, so we know that the aura, even with a challenged person, I don't want to say disabled, because in their mind they may or may not be, but their auras are going to be the same because they function internally, spiritually the same. Mm-hmm. You think?
Probably. They may be more spiritual and less physical colors, just because of, maybe physically they don't get around real well, but their soul's just fine.
Oh, yeah. That's why when you said she said, thank you, she was free, I immediately went to the spirit being lifted out of a challenged body. She couldn't communicate. When
and then I kept her in a cardboard box, and here at the house. I should have made that trip earlier. She wants to get out of that box, and she's out there in the bay swimming with the dolphins with Mom and Patty and a bunch of other. We're building our own sandbar out there.
She can be doing that without the body. I mean, the spirit is free to go wherever it wants to go. It could be racing. She could be racing with the dolphins, riding their backs, because it's just a body.
Yeah,
it's just a body. My son has Keith's ashes on his desk. The younger son has Carrie sitting right on his desk.
Yeah. I was so surprised when I got that message from Cindy, and I had no idea that I guess there was still something with her that was still attached to those ashes. But she said for the first time,
for her.
And she lived to be 67, so this was 68 years of captivity.
Oh, but the lessons that she taught and the lessons that she learned, and she became a part of a community that could make a living because she needed care. There's so much that goes into why we are here.
She was out there for like 63 or 64 of her years. And I asked them if that was a long time. They said, oh, gosh, no, we've had people out here for over 80 and 90 years of their lives. Wow.
Well, Carrie was a part of his community for a very long time. Started here, was in Raleigh, North Carolina for years. So, yeah, the care they have to be cared for. Some of them do. Not all of them can stay at home for their lives. Yep. Sometimes they become too strong for an elder to take care of safely, or need medication. To the point,
she was so strong it took two people to ambulate. If she started to fall, they were going to fall too.
Yeah.
One time, one person tried to give her a shower. They both rode in the same ambulance to get stitches on their forehead, because when Cindy fell, and they both busted the eyebrow area. They both rode.
Mac, I know you missed our metaphysical community. You need to come around more often.
Yeah, I texted Sarah to see if she'd like to join me in September. I hadn't got a response from her, but that's about normal. She's a busy girl these days. But sometimes I won't hear from her for 2 weeks, and she's working 2 different jobs and just staying busy.
It's interesting to think that we watched her grow in a belly. Now she's over 20 years old.
Yeah, she'll be 27 in September.
Mac, we've been at this too long.
I know. She's growing up. I still see them in the swing sets, at 4 years old. Probably all parents see their kids that way. But yeah,
your 2 girls were born fairly close together, right?
About 6 months apart.
Yeah,
just 2 different moms. They're both wonderful. They both think they're my favorite, and they're both right.
Well, as they should.
Yep. Yeah, they know I'm here for them, and I'm so lucky, because when I was a teenager, I was not the best kid. My girls were.
We both did the fairs for a very long time. I'm still doing them. I don't travel the way I used to, but we talked about this a little bit the other night. I'll do them as long as I can because of the camaraderie that our community provides.
It's family.
And it's family. It's a different kind of family. And a lot of that comes from the fact that the public does not often support us, even though they believe in what they do, but they go to the psychic and go home.
Yeah.
We gather to share meals, to break bread, to laugh together, dance together, have fun together. We go to each other's weddings and funerals, and we are a different kind of community, even though we may not see each other but 2 or 3 times a year, depending on where we live. Now, Merlin called me a minute ago. We've known each other since I got back here, and we are good friends. And I have maybe a dozen, like Kramer. Kramer has been a beautiful friend for me for many, many years. And Yanni and I, and Pat Drake, and Linda Drake and her husband, Pat, we would travel to go to Arkansas, and, just load us up in the Tahoe and we'd go. But we need people like you to come back and continue to be a part of the community. Stay in touch. Stay in touch. You've been gone too long, kid.
Yeah, it's been a few years since I was there. The one in September, I think you told me the last weekend in September.
Yes, the last weekend. Friday we'll set up Saturday and Sunday.
Correction. Yeah. Like I said, it'd really be fun if Sarah would join. She's got her own life going on. She's taking some art classes. She's definitely on an artistic bent, and she's done some professional photography. She sold some of her pictures and working at an art studio. And she sent me a picture the other day. Somebody had done a painting of there's an old gas station next door to my apartment. It's kind of well known in Alamo Heights, kind of an old part of San Antonio. Somebody had done a painting of that, and in the background is the apartment building that I'm in. She goes, "Dad, you're in this painting. It's on the wall. Your house is there." Of course it is. And the girl that lives upstairs of me, she was in the Peace Corps years ago and was an art instructor since the 1970s. She moved into this building in the 1970s and is still here. She's the one that takes care of all the cats and the plants and everybody's and stuff. Quite an artist. And she brought me somebody else's aura photo, a girl in California, the most beautiful blue with a white halo. She goes, "Is this a good one?" Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But very metaphysical. She goes, "How did you and I end up living in the same place?" Because I've got all kinds of crystals and stuff. But she's like, "Oh, I love this one and that one's so cool." I don't know. We're just drawn to the same place. Yeah.
Probably because you were part of the same tribe past life.
That's a very good chance.
Apartment buildings I have found to be very tribal. If the same group of people stay for more than 3 or 4 years, you can almost bet they've found their tribe, and they're going to stay there until they're ready for their next journey. And sometimes they continue to keep in touch with the people that were their neighbors, like upstairs, downstairs. Yeah. Same thing with housing areas. You find your tribe and you stay. You trust your neighbors.
I moved into my first apartment in San Antonio, and I was afraid to tell the manager what kind of photography I did. She kept crying and crying. Finally, I told her. She busted out laughing because she was very, very into metaphysics. The lady that lived upstairs of me was a Reiki master, and there were several. Then one of the readers in San Antonio gets an apartment. She's like 2 doors down. It was like somehow we all converged on the same place. How did that even happen? Yeah. It's like, how come we're all in the... What drew us to this? It wasn't the most spectacular place. Looking at my bird feeder, I've got like 9 birds on that feeder right now. God, it's every evening about this time, my cats are looking out the window. No, you're not going out. I'm glad the birds and the hummingbirds, they like it over here. We have a baby hummingbird now.
How would you feel about being back with the camera now at this age and this level of spiritual growth?
I would probably be more inclined to just want to do readings without the camera. But I'm just not there. I'm not there yet. I know Marilyn always told me, if you ever want to come back, come on back. You got a place here, But I don't know that I need that tool anymore. And I was always envious of people that could travel to a show with nothing but a tablecloth and a crystal. That was the whole setup.
And a sign that says your name.
Yep, the sign with your name, and maybe a deck of tarot cards, and okay, we're set up.
I would love to see you do that, Mac. Your maturity and your...
Yeah, I'm not there yet, but I know my sense of observation is definitely much better than it was, even without the camera.
I don't doubt that one bit. I don't think you or a mom, either one, ever gave yourself enough credit for what abilities you did have while you were working the fairs. To me, what you were doing with the colors were your foundation of explanation, but your psychic abilities, both of you, were just wonderful.
I've always said, if I ever wrote a book on my experiences, the amount of credits would be about the first 20 or 30 pages. So all the people that gave me little bits of input, but probably the best one was early on. They said, one of the ladies, I think it was here in San Antonio, she said, "Okay, now throw all your books away and start using your intuition." I was like, really? It was like the doors just opened. All of a sudden, we had 2 cameras for a while. Had a girl here in San Antonio just doing all the local stuff while Mom and I traveled, because she was working 3 weekends out of the month. We were working 4. I mean, we were going and blowing.
I can remember at the Colorado fairs, especially in not Denver, but the other one right down the street, the little city right down the street. That's terrible. I can't remember.
Colorado Springs.
Colorado Springs, right? Because in Colorado Springs, the building that we had the fair was actually built as a community center. So it was a basketball court. It had a stage. It had an arena where people could sit on concrete slabs and watch whatever game was going on. And then all the vendors would be on the covered floor. There was even an ice skating rink. The basketball court would be covered up. Some kind of floor would slide out.
Okay, so they're protected.
Right. Bookstores were up on, and some other kind of crystals and stuff were up on the stage. And then all the readers were in the venues, and there were a lot of us. But when you walked in, there was also a circular area, and there were like a dozen aura photo people.
I believe.
And they were always busy.
Yeah.
Always. And they were right as you walked in that you paid to get in. And some were to the left and some were to the right. And there were men and women. I mean, there were all ages and all kinds of cameras, and some of them from out of state.
Yep.
I mean, it was amazing. And that was the first thing you saw when you walked in, was the aura cameras, and people would just go get in line.
There was a guy, I think his name was Shanti. Does that sound right? It was a promoter.
Shanti, right.
He told me I
put him on.
He said you can get $10 per photo, and then somebody else is going to interpret them. You're just taking the pictures. And I was like, no, I want to interpret them. Yeah.
That's all we were allowed to make was $10 as psychics.
How about that?
That was it for 15 minutes. Yeah. That's what we did. None of us made any. The way we paid for the trip was to build up your clientele and go a day or two and stay a day or two after and do private readings. That's the only way you were going to make any money, because even though we were open from 4 o'clock on Friday to 10, and then all day Saturday, and from Sunday from like 9 or 10 until 6, because everybody had to be out by 10. And there is no way, even if you stayed busy every 15 minutes, you were going to even make your table, a 3-day table.
Between
you
the
did it
table and the travel.
Yeah. And a lot of people took planes. I never took a plane. That's one that we would load the cars up and we just all go together.
There you go. Sure was fun too.
We loved it. We loved it. We had a great time. I love the fair. The fairs were different then than they are now. They're not as busy, but they are still busy, and we still meet wonderful people.
Just jamming with people. I remember Julie would get 900 people through the door.
Yeah, we haven't done that in a long time.
But I think it was just a really cool thing to be doing.
Well, not only that, but they were few and far between. Now, even the smaller cities will have a smaller fair. They may not have but 8 or 9 readers, a couple of vendors, but why should they come 150 miles?
Gotcha.
I mean, early on, San Antonio had nothing.
Yeah.
CTPA, the first fair that CTPA did in San Antonio, we had over 400 people through the door.
Wow.
That was the first fair. So, and finally some producers in San Antonio caught on and they started having their fairs. Of course, it was spread out. Yeah. So we have more people doing that than when we did even 10 years ago. And that's okay, because the whole point of having the fairs was to educate the public. We're not crazy. We can be helpful to you. It's fun, if nothing else. Come meet some nice people. And there you have it. Well, then you had the
learn some stuff and have a good time doing it.
Absolutely. And now you've got psychic lines. So psychics are more accessible than they were 10, 20, 30 years ago. So yeah, it's different. But it's still a valuable place to be if you want good information, talented information, and have fun with your aura photography.
Mm-hmm. And I think so many people were working on their own personal growth, and that was a place where they felt very comfortable, kind of for more information.
Right. And people were also, we still get those people that come on Sunday that go to church, go to lunch, come see us.
Mhm.
And you can always tell because they're all dressed up,
Yep.
usually. But they come. And there are people that are still a little embarrassed about being there. You can tell because they're looking around, making sure their neighbor's not there. I told a lady one time, I said, if you see your neighbor, you've got something on her and she's got something on you.
There you go.
So we just kind of laughed about it. And she thought it was silly, but
yeah, I never understood the people that thought, oh my gosh, this is somehow against Christianity or whatever. I would, if Jesus showed up, I'd take his picture for free. Mother Teresa, sit down, have
faith.
And I would tell people, I said, you've seen the stained glass with all the pictures of Jesus with this beautiful white light around it. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. Can you be more like him? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're all messiahs. We're all messengers.
I've shared this story a lot with people, and I'll share it with you because you may remember the people. Luttrell was doing the fairs. Bastrop City had actually county had it was a beautiful new housing district, and they had a what do you call it, club, community club with a dining room and the whole thing. And they had asked Luttrell to bring a small group out on a Saturday afternoon. She did. There were like 8 or 9 readers, and one of Luttrell's best friends, Julie's best friends, Raven, was sitting next to me. You may remember Raven. She was in her younger days. She had long, pretty blonde hair. She was a professional bodybuilder, and her body was, even at her age, was like a Vicks cough drop because she would still kept her training in, but she didn't compete anymore. And she'd always wear a black skirt, pencil skirt, and a white top, nice and crisp. She always looked nice with her long blonde hair. Well, we're there. We're in the Bible Belt. 4 guys walk in kind of late in the day. So Luttrell didn't charge them to come in. She just said, come on in. Well, we as psychics, I mean, it's not a big room. So of course we noticed them. All of them were probably in their 40s, maybe a little older. Crisp jeans that could stand up by themselves, boots, belts, typical dressy cowboy stuff. They go to all different rooms. Well, one of them sits down at Raven's table. And they're chit-chatting and laughing. And all of a sudden he leaned over and he says, do you believe in Jesus? And she leaned back and she looked at him. She took a deep breath and she said, no. And he looked like this, and she reached over and she patted his hand and she said, honey, I'm Jewish. Don't let the blonde hair fool you. And that's what he did. He just laughed and she laughed. And I sat there for 15 minutes or more listening to them do Bible quipping. And she never dropped a beat.
Yep.
Never dropped a beat. And they got to talking, and she was brought up by a Catholic father and a Jewish mother. Oh. So he could not compete. And it was like listening. I mean, he'd say something and she'd say a Bible reaction right back at him.
I love it.
But I love that story because it was a belief system he was questioning but did not understand. And she educated him.
Well played.
And what you were doing with the aura photography is the same thing. Explaining an energy that we all have that we don't see.
Yeah.
That usually people
bringing
don't see.
People to the light.
Bringing people to the light.
Whether that's God or Allah or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
What's that?
I want you to come back to the community.
I'll come up with it, but I'm not ready to start doing readings, but I think it would be a neat thing to do. I would probably do it without the idea that, okay, I need to make so much money to pay. I don't want any of that even in it. Just maybe work on donations. That way.
That's okay. Well, most producers these days say you have to start charging this much because you can't undercut.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Not all producers, but some do. I usually charge, how much do I charge? $45. All of a sudden, I can't remember how much I charge. $45 for 15 minutes, I think. And I do not let somebody stay for an hour, especially if we have a full house. And besides that would be over what I normally charge for a private reading anyway. And that's, you're losing the reason why we're there. We're there to show people what kind of tools there are and what we're all about, and we can be of service to them if they will allow it to be. So some people charge for an hour and they charge a lot, but also depends on what town you're in. You know, I can go to New York and make $500 an hour, but that's what people are used to paying. It's the community. I could go to Oklahoma and probably make $300 for a private reading just for tarot. That was a couple of years ago. Our money has changed. So I charge what I think is reasonable for my community. And that's it. And if they decide to leave a tip, that's up to them. I never ask them. So at the fairs, I do the same thing. Fairs are meant to be a taste, an explanation of the tools, and a taste. And that's it. And if they want a longer reading, a more in-depth reading, here's my card. Give me a call. And that's it. So, yeah, you could easily come in and say donation starting at, gotcha. And then leave it up to them. If the low was 25, they might leave you 20 or more. Yeah. People tend to round up to the nearest 5. That's just our nature, I think. But you could probably still do that beginning at.
I still remember one of the shows, an elderly lady, I guess she was probably about 80 years old, had a little bit of trouble just getting in the chair. And we do her photo, and she handed me a $20 bill, but we were charging $25. I didn't have the heart to tell her, okay, yeah. The next person in line tipped me $5 extra. It's like
that's the way it comes back.
See how that works?
Yeah, when you give from the heart, you'll get it.
I don't believe in coincidence. It was supposed to, but I just didn't have the heart to tell her. I mean, how do you tell this sweet little old lady, hey, by the way, it's.
And she could have seen your sign and just didn't see the 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't even know if I had it posted.
Yeah. So she could have just seen 20 and that was it. You never know. You never know.
I had some people that they tell me I forgot to pay them. I mean, I forgot to charge them at the previous fair. They pay them. I said, thank you. You remember how busy we get. It'd get a little bit chaotic. When Sarah was first, I think I told you the story the other day, when my little girl, Sarah, was getting one of her first jobs, they wanted to know about job experience. And she says, Dad, I haven't had a job before. So I don't know what to tell them. And I said, my gosh, who used to set up the camera? I did. Who used to run the credit cards and do a lot of the cashiering? I did. Who used to help explain to the crowd of people that was waiting in line because Mom had somebody and I had somebody I was talking to, and you're over there explaining to them how the camera works and showing them what the colors are. So you've done explanations, you've done interpretations, you've done cashiering, you've set up photography equipment and all that. I said, you got a resume going and you're not even giving yourself credit for it.
She was a team worker. She took care of her responsibilities.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
Oh, she was so good in the Girl Scouts. I remember when she went for her driving test, I had taught her how to drive on a standard. And so she went to go do her test with a standard transmission. And the lady said, you can't do that because I have to be able to drive the car. So they had to get a second person to ride with them. They could drive the standard. She got a 95 on that. The little tiny Sarah, she's still a very, very tiny person, but she weighed maybe 85 pounds. She puts both thumbs up and goes, I'm a Girl Scout. I got this. She did something we were out in Midland, and she was helping Cindy and Dennis when they started packing up at the end of a show. And I look over and Sarah's walking on one of the tables through all the crystals and cabochons and everything. And Sarah, get down. And Cindy's like, Dad, you just do your thing over there. We got this. And Cindy said she started packing differently after Sarah helped her that day because she started putting all the cabochons in this box and all around the spheres in this one and whatever. But Sarah would go through it. Sarah, will you go through it? So she's walking through all these, picking all the globes or whatever.
Children, swear to goodness, they just think differently.
Yeah,
they truly think outside the box.
But she told me, she said, thanks, Dad. I never knew there was a box because we never put her. And her mom and stepdad, they were doing shows. Robbie was making essential oils, and Joe was doing his guru stuff that he does, and that's a bad way to put it. It sounds negative. But Anyway, Sarah says now, she says, I grew up in a traveling circus because every weekend I was going somewhere with mom or somewhere. And she
It
loves
seems like a circus sometimes, I'm sure, when people walk in.
straight A kid. When she started college, she was glad because she'd always been homeschooled. She says, "You mean I'm going to have friends and teachers?" Next thing you know, she's tutoring the other kids because her mind is developed where she loves to learn. So she goes into college, makes straight A's, never even came close to making a B on anything. Her mind's like a steel trap. I still think she's going to grow up to be a pediatrician one day. She's like, "Oh, they weren't too hard." I said, "It's never too late." She's one of those that would do it like 2 years early.
Who knows? She's still just a kid.
She's
mature kid, but she's still just a kid.
But I still see her doing something along those lines or starting. I could see her, even if she was a doctor, she'd be like with Doctors Without Borders, going all over the world, up in indigenous people.
I'm gonna have to move that slat. It's right. Hang on a second.
Oh, I see the sun's getting, sun's not quite hitting me. I noticed my neighbor was outside to water, so all the birds flew off for a minute, but they'll be back.
There we go. Okay. I'm going to have to close this down. What would you like to tell the public about your days as an aura person or the fairs?
All of the above. My own personal growth is probably what's amazed me the most, because I was having more fun than my clients were. I might have a busy day with 30 people. That by the end of the day, I've learned from each and every one of them. I've learned something. And so it's amazing the amount of growth that I got out of that. And it certainly made me a lot more aware of what kind of person that I am. But also my sense of observation of others. I could just sit all day and just watch. I could go sit in a park and watch people all day. And I won't be bored.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
And, but my whole, my life's not all about me. It's about what can I do for the world? What can I do to make it a better place? I try to be a good role model and all of that. But I feel like I really need to win the lottery because of the amount of things I could do for for everybody. Nobody
have fun doing it.
100. But
and have fun doing it.
Yeah. I think when you're doing stuff for other people, you work a lot harder.
I agree.
If you're just doing stuff for yourself, I don't have to have the fanciest or the newest or the whatever. But if I was doing it for everybody else, I'd be, working 4 times as hard. If somebody hasn't had an aura photo, I highly recommend getting one just as a starting point. Okay, this is where I am, and maybe I see another one that's kind of white halo. Now, how do I get from here to here? Okay, if I start paying, just a few minutes a day, just maybe some quiet meditation, start looking out for the best and highest use of your time, and for best, you want the best for everybody. Even now, if I get somebody that maybe I've got an adversarial relationship with a coworker, I don't wish anything bad for them. I might wish that, hey, maybe they could move to another city. I don't wish them, death or harm or bad luck or anything. If I didn't have to deal with them, they'd be okay. Get their thing to go through. And sometimes I'll just hit them with so much white light.
There you go.
That's when I finally got over, when I first got divorced, I was just crushed. It was just the most awful thing. And then I started realizing, wait a minute, they're providing a home for my kid. I want that to be a happy, healthy home. I started envisioning them with a lot of white light around them. Boom. I was over the divorce in no time after. It was like, talk about a lesson. It's like, wow, I'm feeling sorry for myself, but no, I want the best for my kid and her other kids. And, that was a whole lot more.
Years ago, I was taught by someone I worked with who was very spiritual. I was going through a hard time, and I made an offhanded comment that, you kind of mean and you kind of don't. And she said, "You know what you need to do, sweetheart?" I was in my 30s. She was probably in her 50s, lived more than I had. And she said, "You just wish them on to their higher good. And if their higher good happens to be cleaning toilets, well, then it's not your problem. And if their higher good, right, is to win the lotto and get out of your way, that's okay too." So now when something is really bugging me or somebody's bugging me,
that's a good one. I hope they win the lottery and move.
Whatever, I just wish them on to their higher good, whatever that is.
And what you wish for others is back on you. So yeah, that's a good one. But if somebody hasn't gone to the shows, I don't want to say they're addictive, but you'll get there and you'll you'll learn 10 things, but over the next week, you'll have 20 more questions. So you'll be wanting to come back to learn more.
You're opening up the box of knowledge, really, when you walk into the fair.
Well,
yeah. And it seems like people's minds become more open to whatever journey they're on, and they don't even know what that is until then. And yes, some people are still afraid of the tools for whatever reason, and that's okay.
Some kind of an ingrained thing where some person that thought their religion was the only religion on the whole planet. You got to think like this. You get out here, you're gonna.
And we have people that I'll have, because I use the tarot cards. I have people that say, "Please don't use the cards." Okay, that's all right. And I have other people that they love the cards because they're so colorful, and they can go home and say, "Well, the Ace of Cups was there, so whatever." So it just depends. But whenever people come, one of the first things I ask them is, "Have you had an aura photo made?" You got to go get an aura photo. That's one of the first things I encourage people to do. If your budget will allow you, go get you an aura photo. You will learn so much about yourself.
Yeah, I used to do. I think in sales they call it a takeaway close. A lot of people would be walking by and kind of curious. Well, would you like to do one? Not today. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to spur your curiosity because you're going to leave here today. I wonder what. When you come back the next time, you'll probably be over here, and you're welcome anytime.
Yeah. It's good. It's been a joy to reconnect with you and to have you here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for tuning into the Conversations with the Ancients, where we take you on a journey where you'll hear voices of metaphysicians from the past, as well as today's spirit mediums, healers, and others who show you a side of the paranormal you've never seen before. Remember to visit our website at conversationswiththeancients.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on Conversations with the Ancients.